Hey everybody, I just had a really exciting and interesting conversation with a client. He's a business owner and he's been owning his business as a sole proprietorship. So what's a sole proprietorship? Sole proprietorship is when somebody's conducting a business, but from a legal and tax standpoint, the business is entirely that person individually. So Ryan Carson, the law firm, as a sole proprietorship would just be Ryan Carson, Carson Law. Whereas what actually is in place with Ryan Carson, Carson Law is Carson Law Office Professional Corporation. So a corporation is standing alone from a legal and a tax perspective as its own entity. And so this client came to see me because he wanted to know, what are some of the benefits of moving from a sole proprietor to a corporation. And so one of the benefits can be some tax opportunity and some tax planning. Another great benefit, which was really important to him, was creditor protection. He wanted to make sure that none of his personal assets, like their family home, cottage, vehicles, other types of monetary investments, he wanted to make sure that those would be sheltered and protected from creditors, suppliers, any sort of potential lawsuit that could be levied against his sole proprietorship if that were to occur. And so creating a corporation, creating a corporate structure to his entity, to his sole proprietor business, and transitioning it into that corporate structure is going to provide him this creditor protection, this protection from business liabilities, business exposure to the personal assets and to personally accumulated wealth and so forth. So it creates that divide from a legal and tax standpoint. So that was really exciting. But then we got diving a little bit more into the type of business he has and what he's been doing as a sole proprietor. And there's just very, very, very many levels of planning here to do with him, which is very exciting. And you could tell he was excited and energized by it too. Not only is there the corporate structure, but there's, when you take a sole proprietor that has value, whether it's in inventory, goodwill, assets, etc., and you transition it into a corporation, you need to do something called a rollover agreement. If you don't do that rollover agreement, it would be like you sold your sole proprietor to the corporation. And of course, our friendly government is going to have their hands out saying, well, you just did a sale, I need my tax on that. And it's going to be taxed at fair market value. So you want to avoid that. So you need to make sure, if you're doing a transition of a sole proprietorship with value to a corporation, a corporate structure, even though you're essentially just continuing to do the business you always did, but just under a corporate structure, you need to make sure that you've had the proper legal and tax advice to make sure we've got, at a bare minimum, a rollover agreement in place. This will shield you from having to pay the government on that transition from sole proprietor to corporate. The other thing that really started to come out of this conversation too was, have a plan, a corporate structure on where you want to go, not where you are. So what does that mean? It means, okay, well, what do you want to do with this business? Is it a quick growth and sale opportunity to somebody in the family or at arm's length, to a key employee, to a group of employees? Or is it a long time hold play, right? Because what you want to do is you want to make sure whatever structure you put in place is geared towards that ultimate growth and ultimate possible succession and exit strategy, especially from a tax standpoint. And not being a tax expert here, I'm not giving you tax advice. I'm just letting you know that from a tax standpoint, we need to make sure that corporate structure is set up in such a way so that if you do sell the business and you sell the shares of the business, you're still going to be able to capitalize and maximize the possible capital dividends exemption that a business gets. Right now, that's approximately around $1 million. Meaning, if you sold the business for $2 million and you had a capital gains exemption of $1 million available to you under the corporate structure, you'd have $1 million of the $2 million sale at low to no tax, which is huge compared to selling assets of the business or the sole proprietor at $2 million and just having to pay tax on $2 million. That would be a big hit. So this also leads to other conversations and other planning opportunities we had with this client, which was creating not only personal will, but corporate will. By creating a corporate will, you're going to be able to further reduce the administrative taxes that would go on your untimely death to the government. You want to try to minimize what you're paying to the government. Nobody wants to give them more than they have to. The other thing that came out of this conversation was, he has kids, the kids are younger at the moment. At what point can they be involved? Well, they can be involved in the business, but we need to make sure they actually really are involved in the business. Otherwise, there's tax rules and loopholes that are going to step in and essentially negate you from being able to, sprinkle or share your income across other family members. You can't do that if they're not actually really involved in the business. But there could be some planning there. If they do have involvement in the business, even if it's just a little bit, there's opportunity there to help create legitimate planning. Finally, there's other great opportunities when it comes to corporately owned business insurance to help you deal with the eventual taxes, the eventual estate administrative taxes, the costs of a sale, the transitions of a sale. And a lot of that can be done earlier on in the business growth and development. And we got talking about that as well. And so all of this is really just a pretty big ramble because we just had a really excited client who knew nothing about any of this. And we wanted to share it with you guys because there's probably other people out there just like this client who, had no idea about what's all involved moving a sole proprietor to a corporation. There's quite a bit involved. As you can see, there's corporate considerations, there's tax considerations, there's estate planning considerations, there's further consideration on what is the succession and exit strategy of the business, at what point, timing, etc. How do we help supplement the taxes and the costs of eventual sale and or death of the principal of the business? And how can we figure out how to make the success and the wealth of this business succeed to other generations? Give us a call. We can help you. Take care.